Los Angeles teems with millions of people, 3.5 million in its city limits alone, its greater urban area 12 or 15 million, depending on who you ask. In the United States, it's surpassed by only New York, one of just two American metropolises that qualifies as a megacity, an urban area larger than 10 million. Only 20 cities on the planet are larger than it, only 4 in the entire Western Hemisphere. LA is a giant, a massive population center on the American West Coast, key to the transformation of California into the most populous state in the nation. But under the cover of this golden state megacity is another story, one not of growth, but of loss, of a fertile valley turned desert, of a lake, once California's third largest, lost to time. This is the story of two places in California, separated by 160 miles. A century ago, both were fruitful agricultural regions. One would grow and flourish into a city of tens of millions. The other would fade into the dust. This is that story. Hello and welcome to That Is Interesting. I'm your host, Carter. Today, the story of California's third largest lake, and its erasure from the map. 1849 is often described as the seminal year in California history, when gold found in its Sierra Nevada sparked a rush of population by land and sea to settle this newly conquered piece of land, acquired so recently by the U.S. that it was not even yet a territory. But for Southern California, the year 1913 might be equally as important. That was the year that the relatively small city of Los Angeles completed a stunning feat of engineering, an aqueduct stretching 233 miles across mountains and desert from a valley near the Nevada border. Now, before 1913, Los Angeles had already undergone a period of significant change. Colonial Spain had constructed a string of missions along the California coast to convert the colony's indigenous population to Christianity, and in doing so, try to create subjects loyal to the Spanish crown. This huge Spanish province, called Alta California, was a sparsely settled frontier region, often overlooked by Spain. Under later Mexican rule, it would be demoted to territorial status. The Spanish colonial presence consisted primarily of this string of missions, as well as military forts called presidios. But as more missions and presidios were built, Spain realized they needed a stable food supply, more than the food that was being farmed on the missions. So they ordered the foundation of a few pueblos, agricultural towns that would farm the land and produce extra food. One of these pueblos, on a flat, fertile plain in the Pacific, a rare break in the mountains of the California coast, was given a long name: El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de los Ángeles del Río Porciúncula, or the town of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels, of the Porciúncula River. Eventually, the pueblo would simply be called Los Angeles, or Los Angeles by later English-speaking settlers. Families from Mexico settled the town, which became fairly successful, a self-sufficient farming town of around 1,600 people when the U.S. took over. The American settlers who flocked west during the gold rush mostly ignored Southern California. Their interests were in the gold-rich Sierra Nevada and the San Francisco Bay, the port of entry to this gold-hunting region. But hundreds of thousands of people had moved to the state, and while the gold quickly ran out, most of the prospectors stayed and began to take an interest in other regions besides the north. Some businessmen looking to cash in on this influx of settlers built a railroad south from San Francisco. In 1876, it reached Los Angeles. The small town was then home to just 6,000 people, but with the railroad, growth began almost immediately. 11,000 in 1800, 50,000 in 1890. Oil was discovered near the city 2 years later, and this would draw more people to the fast-growing town. By 1900, LA broke 100,000. By 1910, it was a major American city in its own right, home to over 300,000 people, the 17th largest in the country, and California's second largest city after just San Francisco. What a period of change it had been for this small farm town. Growth, it seemed, was not on track to stop or even slow. Other towns were springing up left and right throughout the Los Angeles basin, and growing fast. Los Angeles County altogether was now home to more than 500,000 people. But in sunny Southern California, with its warm Mediterranean climate, some wondered how long it could all last. The city, after all, was already running up on its natural water supply from the rivers in the area, and other nearby cities were now providing competition. Without more water, LA's growth could not continue forever. Beyond the coast ranges from Los Angeles, beyond the Mojave Desert that lay on the other side of the mountains, around the high peaks of the Sierra Nevada lay the long, thin Owens Valley. Hundreds of miles away, this arid valley today seems almost an extension of the Mojave Desert. But 100 years ago, desert may not have been the best description for the Owens Valley. The valley lies within the Great Basin, a vast stretch of basins and ranges between the Sierra Nevada and the watershed of the Colorado River, where water never reaches any ocean, instead evaporating in the hot and dry climate. Most of the Great Basin is indeed a desert, but some areas are actually quite lush and green. Many peaks in the basin reach high enough to receive huge amounts of snow. Melting waters from the snowfall flow down into nearby valleys and give areas sitting near the tallest peaks large rivers, fertile soil, green landscapes, and a number of major lakes. For example, look at Nevada's Humboldt Valley, whose riverside meadows are quite a bit greener than some of the state's other valleys, or the valleys alongside the Great Salt Lake, where snowmelt from the Wasatch Range has allowed large farming communities to develop, not to mention the major urban area of Salt Lake City. The high peaks of the Sierra Nevada are a great example. To the west, melting snow feeds the Central Valley, the most productive agricultural region in the U.S., and the source of 40% of the country's fruits, vegetables, and nuts. To the east, the valleys of the eastern Sierra, like the Bridgeport Valley, the Truckee Meadows, and the Antelope Valley, are part of the Great Basin, yes, but much greener and lusher than areas further from the Sierras. Huge lakes like Walker Lake, Pyramid Lake, and Mono Lake are fed by snowmelt from the mountains. The Owens Valley and Owens Lake, which sat at the southern end of it, similarly received a lot of water. This water would flow out of the mountains, down the valley from the north, and end up in Owens Lake, where the river would end and its waters evaporate. This salty lake took up around 110 square miles, or 280 square kilometers. This made Owens Lake the third largest lake in the state, after Tulare Lake and Lake Tahoe. It became the fourth largest after a ruptured canal accidentally resulted in the creation of another massive body of water, the Salton Sea, and the third once more after Central Valley farmers drained Tulare Lake, one of the largest lakes in the United States. In the 1860s, the Owens Valley was transforming as well. The northern gold rush over, miners had moved into the valley seeking out silver in its nearby mountains. Farmers grew crops in the valley to feed these mining communities, provide hay for their horses, and ranch livestock themselves. A lumber mill milled wood from the Sierras, and ships transported silver ore across Owens Lake en route to Los Angeles. Towns like Bishop, Big Pine, and Lone Pine were founded and thrived in this agricultural valley. At the turn of the century, though, the interests of these two places would clash, and each would change forever. William Mulholland had watched Los Angeles grow spectacularly. When he arrived from Ireland, his new town had been home to just 9,000 people. Now, it was a major American city, and he was responsible for managing its water supply. The chief engineer of the LA Bureau of Waterworks and Supply, Mulholland recognized that his city did not have enough water to continue growing for long, especially at the rate it had been. Los Angeles, he thought, could be much bigger. The principal town on a large plain, now covered in orchards, farms, and citrus groves, there was far more land across which Los Angeles could expand, not to mention in the San Fernando Valley and other large valleys that sat just over the mountains from the plain. They would need to bring in water from elsewhere, and the Owens Valley looked appealing. Mulholland sent representatives to the valley, pretending to be interested in establishing farms and ranches of their own. They quietly bought up land along the river, and with it, water rights to the valley. Unbeknownst to the long-established farming community of the Owens Valley, their new neighbors were not here to join them, but to take their water. The city of Los Angeles now controlled much of the Owens Valley. In 1908, Mulholland began construction on the Los Angeles Aqueduct, diverting much of the Owens River's water into the canal and transporting it south through the valley and across the Mojave through a series of canals, tunnels, and pipes to a reservoir in the San Fernando Valley. By 1913, the aqueduct was complete. Within a few years, its impact on the Owens Valley was becoming clear. The lake, no longer receiving nearly enough water from the Owens River, dried up. The third largest lake in the state, a seasonal puddle at best, primarily a dry, salty lake bed. Even the groundwater was impacted. Springs dried up, trees died. The green grasses which had covered the valley floor did too. Agriculture could no longer be sustained, and the farmers and ranchers who called the valley home lost their livelihoods. Furious about the secretive ways in which the water rights to the valley had been acquired by the city and the devastation it had wrought on their home, the farmers fought back. In 1924, a group of farmers blew up a portion of the aqueduct. That same year, protesting farmers occupied a section known as the Alabama Gates. In the next few years of what were known as the California Water Wars, Owens Valley farmers attempted to destroy the canal some 9 or 10 more times. In the end, it was to no avail. Los Angeles would continue pumping water south. The canal's impact on the city was immediate. By 1920, its population had nearly doubled to 576,000, overtaking San Francisco as the largest city in the state. By 1930, it would surpass 1.2 million, now the 5th largest city in the United States. With a guaranteed supply of water, Los Angeles had an edge over its rivals, and successfully purchased and annexed a number of neighboring towns with less access to water. The growth Mulholland hoped to see would come to be, and his name would come to adorn one of the city's most famous streets. But his aqueduct would not be enough for the growth that would create the country's second largest city, an urban area of 15 million people in the country's most populous state. Inspired by his success, more canals would be built, one shipping water into Los Angeles from the Colorado River. Another, the even more ambitious California Aqueduct, would bring water from Northern California's Sacramento Valley. The Los Angeles Aqueduct, too, was expanded north to draw water from Mono Lake, but a successful lawsuit in 1994 capped the amount of water the city can draw from the lake, and likely saved what is today the state's 4th largest lake from meeting the same fate as Owens Lake. As for the Owens Valley, its water still flows south, much of it controlled by the LA Department of Water and Power, as Mulholland's organization is now known. The valley is practically a desert, and the lake bed, where ships once crossed the 3rd largest lake in the state, is today the largest single source of dust pollution in the United States, a hazard to the health of many of its residents. In March of 2023, heavy rains hit much of the state, bringing floods to much of California and briefly bringing back the state's 2 ghost lakes, Tulare Lake in the San Joaquin Valley and Owens Lake, which returned for the first time in a century after floodwaters breached the aqueduct. There is still some water in the lake bed, but nowhere near as much as there was a century ago. If you enjoyed this video, I have a number of other videos on California and its fascinating and often contentious water history. I recommend you check out my most popular video on the draining of Tulare Lake, my video on its brief resurgence, my video on the accidental creation of the state's current largest lake, the Salton Sea, and my video on the California Aqueduct and some of the state's other major water projects. I also have a video on the state's vastly different regions that I think you'll enjoy. If you want to learn more about the Owens Valley, Owens Lake, and the California Water Wars, I included some links in the description. I'd also love it if you check out my longest running series, The US Explained, an ongoing 56-part series on every state, territory, and federal district in the country. California will be the next episode. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something new. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover the countries, cities, people, and places of the world and beyond. These videos will leave you saying, "That is interesting."